Today we have Andrew Solhiem, Professor Andrew Solhiem in the building. Jean jacket, fuzzy shirt, chest hair.
Just a bunch of awesomeness, basically.
Everything you could ever want.
We got it all.
3rd degree black belt. What's the certification you guys just did? In Vegas.
Internal strength model.
He's an internal strength model.
Coach.
FRS.
It's a great Scion, which is now gone. It's a Toyota FRS. And he's an all-around good guy that's here to talk with us.
Yeah, we wanted to have him on the first episode, but, things conspired against us, I think.
Yeah, we were cursed for this one.
Yeah, big time. So we're all kind of limping in here to do this one, aren't we? Post various pestilence and...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I know.
What's the date today? The 16th?
Man, I don't even know. I've been sick, so...
16th.
Is it okay?
I think we tried to do this before Christmas.
Yeah.
Actually, I know we tried to do this before Christmas because I have a little something here, a little gift for our...
Oh, before we even get started with the...
Take your shirt off, bro.
I want to start because it's been in my back of my pants here for the last...
You know what? This is like how you promote us, too.
Yeah, so this is exactly. So I'm going to get up here. Is that okay for me to get out of my seat?
Sure.
Okay, because I got to walk over towards you.
Towards me?
Yeah,
towards you.
So put the camera on you, Bill.
So yeah, here we go. This is a gift for my friend Bill.
For me?
For you. It's a Christmas gift.
Yeah, late Christmas gift.
It's wrapped and everything?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to unwrap it.
Okay.
All right, Andrew. We got this. We can watch him.
Well, actually, here, let me do this. I think I can do a picture in picture.
Dude, you're burning air time.
I can take my jacket off, too.
Yeah, you're burning air time, Bill.
Okay.
Just unwrap it.
Feature in here that's...
Oh, hold on there. You got to read the label.
To senpai from sensei. That accent's going to get me in trouble. Can you see it? Oh, there it is.
All right.
I'm a good senpai. Can I open it right now?
Yeah, that's
the whole idea.
Let me just tear into this bad boy. It's a book. I love it.
I knew you would.
Tom DeBlas. How You Bear It. I'm going to read this in a bubble bath with my shirt off.
You better.
Hey, and by the way.
And it's signed?
It is signed.
You son of a
That's
guy.
how I feel every time we do this podcast. Is like, I got to read that so I can learn how to bear it.
Yeah. This is amazing.
I mean, the title was what did me in.
Is this our first studio art?
It might be.
Can we put it right here?
We can. That's fantastic. Well, that was really thoughtful of you, Andrew.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought about Bill.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. We talk about him a lot. We both follow him.
Yeah, the bare arms.
Yeah.
All right.
Chris is like, so this was a mistake.
No, man. I'm just...
Wanted to have a good podcast with intellectuals and...
Yeah.
Are you kidding? Yeah. No. You guys know me better than that.
That's true. You're a big stick in the mud.
Oh, my... yeah.
Yeah, so enjoy, my friend.
Thank you.
Let me know how it is.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's going to be great.
We may end up doing a future segment. Oh, yeah. We may end up doing like maybe a book club.
Yeah, that could be good.
Like Oprah?
Maybe.
I think she had a book club.
Sky's the limit, man. So I wanted to have you on, first of all. Sorry, it's the second podcast. We really wanted to have you on for the first one.
Brittany's number one. I got to admit.
Well, she did an admirable job.
It's okay.
Okay. So
I'm not jealous of her at all.
No. And,
Love
yeah, we do too. But we also wanted to have you on, at least at the beginning, to say thanks for bringing this ragged group of people together and we wouldn't have this if it wasn't for you. So,
Shucks.
Well, I know, man. I know you don't like being the center of attention, but we really appreciate the culture and everything you bring to the academy. And so it starts from the top. I don't know how Bill snuck in, but
Don't worry, I was shaking my head the whole time.
Were you?
False.
False. Fake.
Oh my gosh. Andrew.
Sorry.
Fake news. Well, I thought this was a good topic for Andrew to have on because I get asked this all the time about strength training for grappling. First of all, why should you listen to a physician about strength training? Most of the time, I would say you should not. Most of them don't know what they're talking about. They still say squats are bad for your knees and things like that. I was fortunate enough to be a trainer longer than I've been a doc, and kind of got interested in it back when I was a diver in the military. It was kind of a culture of fitness. And, I got really fascinated with why we were doing some of the things we were doing for physical training to prepare us for our job, right or wrong at the time. I liked it enough, so when I got out of the military the first time, went to college, I got certified by American College of Sports Medicine to be a trainer so I could make some money because I was a poor college student. But I got kind of sucked into that and went deep down the rabbit hole for years and years and years, and now we're 25 years later after various other certifications and, made all the mistakes in the world. Strength training is still a passion of mine. And when I started doing jiu-jitsu in my early mid-40s, I started thinking about, well, what would be the best approach to grappling? And I want your perspective because when people say, is strength important in jiu-jitsu? I know what I think about that. You as a kind of experienced black belt, what's your take on that, strength and jiu-jitsu's supposedly the gentle art?
So I'm really kind of new to strength training in the traditional sense, but I don't really think of, so what I mean by that is in the traditional sense is in using things such as like weights or barbells or kettlebells or dumbbells. But I've been strength training for a long time because strength training is movement under resistance, which is jiu-jitsu.
It is. But I guess a better way to phrase the question is, you hear people say, do you need strength for, is strength beneficial?
Oh, yeah. So of course it is. Of course it is. I think that that's such a misnomer that it's not important. Because of course it's important. There's a reason why there's weight classes. Right? There's a reason why the top guys are juicing, because it matters and it has a direct impact.
Yeah. And, I've always said that, especially if you can build some strength to enhance your technique, not in place of it. I sometimes we see, and you tell me your perspective, but sometimes I'll see, new people come in as white belts and they're really strong. And that can carry them for a little bit. And then they kind of run into, even to the point where they're not really working on, let's say, their guard or something like that. Do you think that's and they're using that attribute before their technique, but that's also not saying that it's not valuable. So, you hear that all the time. You're like, oh, you should be, it should be technique, leverage. It's for smaller people. We don't need strength. And I agree with you. I think that's completely ridiculous. I think strength is absolutely an attribute, but, I like to think of using it to enhance what you know.
Yeah, so there's...
Chris, you need to move that mic away from your face.
Okay.
When you clear your throat.
Oh, sorry.
This is the last warning.
I've been warned.
That was good.
Gotcha. So there's a lot to unpack with that. And what I mean by that is you can look at strength as simply just being strong in certain movements or certain positions, which and that's going to be helpful. But what's really helpful is when you're a good athlete, right? So not everybody that's strong is a good athlete. And so let me give an example of this. Let's say you get somebody who's big and strong, and they come into jiu-jitsu, but they're just not very coordinated or not very athletic. Now this person's on top of me, and what are they gonna do? They're maybe just a meathead. They're gonna come try and grab my head. Meanwhile, I got my butterfly hooks, so I'm easily able to tilt them in reverse position on them.
Right.
Take top position, top control. That's not too difficult if the person's not really athletic. Now you get a guy that's athletic, that understands body mechanics. Maybe they've never done jiu-jitsu before, but they understand things like timing and balance, and maybe they played some football. They just have a little bit more athleticism, but they're also strong and explosive. That to me is a way different animal and a different puzzle than just the guy who's physically strong and has got big muscles.
Agreed. So they're able to use their strength in an athletic manner.
Right. And they also have balance and control, So I don't think strength is isolated to just being strong. I think there's kind of several different kinds of strength, obviously. And to me, I want to develop more of the athletic strength conditioning, rather than just being strong in a particular movement, being strong in different ranges of movement, and being adaptable. So it's hard to break that down. It's hard to break that question down because I've had strong guys come in who have been easily able to manipulate. I've had other guys come in who's like, this guy's got some athletic movement to him, and it's not as easy to crack this code.
That's right. And I agree 100% with that. And there's plenty of examples that we've, at the academy too. What about, have you been asked as a coach and a professor about, hey, what should I do to build strength? Has anybody ever come up to you and ask you about, how can they get stronger for their grappling?
Yeah, I have. More recently, I would say more. It's funny because it's probably been, excuse me here. Over the last probably couple months, I've had that question come up more. Really, since we started down this path, went down and did the internal strength module. People have been asking me more about that and how they can build strength. And I think with our warm-ups too, we've had a lot of people complimenting us on how we warm up and how we go about preparing our bodies for jiu-jitsu. That's turned people on to it, and I've had more questions about it. Yeah. I don't know that I'm necessarily qualified at this point necessarily to evaluate their weaknesses. I think there's a difference between me taking somebody I feel comfortable enough with somebody who doesn't have imbalances and saying these are the things that maybe we should start working on. But when you have somebody that has imbalances or has some dysfunction, that requires an evaluation of what's wrong.
Sure.
And then coming up with a program to fix it. And I don't feel comfortable in that area yet.
Well, let me tell you, that's years and years to develop that anyway. But you're getting the questions. I've been getting those questions for quite a while now. And one of the things I started doing early, I think it was about blue belt level for me, is what would that look like, a program for people, and what characteristics would a program have to enhance your grappling? And I had some ideas. I wrote them down here because I'm very tangential and I want to keep us on task here. My thought was, and I want you to definitely chime in, but the biggest needs for a program would be minimal equipment, a short time commitment, applicable to performance needs for grappling as best as possible, enhance injury prevention and avoidance of overtraining, because we're doing this not in a vacuum. We're doing this in someone that is probably grappling, at least 2 to 3 times a week.
Which is, in its own right, a form of strength training.
Big time. And so when you're doing extra stuff on top of it, we have to kind of look and, you got to look at your complete training load. Because you can overtrain pretty easily, especially your age, depending on what you have going on. But those are kind of the baseline characteristics that I wanted when I was starting to design that. And you mentioned that we went to Dr. Spina's his FRS system. We went to their first internal strength model seminar back in November, which I thought was awesome.
Right.
Really opened my eyes to a lot of things that traditionally we haven't been taught. It doesn't mean that we need to throw out everything that's come up previously.
And for the listeners that maybe are unaware, the FRS, that's Functional Range Systems, is a program that incorporates different programs, right? So a year ago, we did the Functional Range Conditioning class, and then this was another program within their systems, the Functional Range Internal Strength module, and that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, and it's been pretty influential. Even the FRC was influential. Training strength at end range.
Right.
What I thought was pretty cool, especially for injury prevention. I think it's a really good thing. So, kind of backtrack a little bit. Some of my big influences, because people listen to this, some of them may be in the strength training world. I can tell you, I gave you a little bit of history, but after I went to medical school and went back in the Navy as a doctor, I continued my strength training education too. And I was fortunate enough to run into who was probably my biggest mentor, for sure, not probably, was Marty Gallagher, who's probably, I think, arguably one of the top powerlifting coaches in the world. Just really incredibly fortunate to run into that guy and pick his brain. And he actually co-authored a book with me, and it was an amazing experience. The guy is just a wealth of knowledge. There goes my little book reference. And Pavel, I know, Andrew, you followed some of Pavel's stuff with the kettlebell. His whole system is fantastic. Dr. Joel Seidman, you probably looked at some of his stuff. I directly ripped off some of his stuff for this program, especially the eccentric isometric thing that he likes. I think it was really applicable to grappling. And then more recently, I even dabbled into the knees over toes guy, Ben Patrick, who has some really interesting stuff. So anyway, you just take your influences, what you know, and then try to apply them into a problem. And so here are the principles. Again, I'm putting my glasses on because I can't read without them. I'd like your comment on some of these, if something strikes you as that you don't necessarily agree with or want to comment more on. But the big principles were, I think grappling needs several different types of strength, and you alluded to that. Eccentric, isometric, and with intermittent explosiveness too. So there's some isometric, some kind of holding strength, some lowering strength, some controlling movement, and then intermittent kind of explosive movements as well, too. Is kind of what the requirements are. I also wanted to build strength through a complete range of motion. In other words, not do partial range of motion. Really, if we're doing a pushing exercise, making sure we get that all the way back as far as we can. Really push those joints at their end ranges, even if you have to drop weight. I think training that is really helpful for preventing injury. Another one I also feel pretty strongly about is being able to internally stabilize your body as opposed to rely on external stabilization. Perfect example would be if we're doing a pushing exercise. If I'm on a bench press, I have external stability. In other words, the bench is providing stability against what I'm pushing against. Mm-hmm. But if I'm doing a ring row, or ring push-up, I should say, you're providing the stability internally. You're stabilizing your own body during the movement so it doesn't kind of break.
Right.
And I think that's important for grappling as well too, being able to integrate and stabilize internally. So that went into the design of the program.
I would say, yeah, for sure on that, because it's funny because I've been doing, in addition to some of the work I've been doing with the academy, with the rings and the kettlebells and stuff, I've been doing a little bit of barbell work at the gym. And Eli's been going in with me.
Nice.
He asks, he gets tired of hearing tighten your core. And he was asking me, Dad, how do I work out my stomach? I was like, almost every exercise you do should be working out your stomach. That's what I mean by tightening the core.
Yeah, stomach, right? That's great.
But then you see some, like going back to that athlete versus like just like a real athletic strength. You see some of these guys, like some of these CrossFit guys, and their midsections are just, their trunks are huge.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Just that core stabilization is so important.
Exactly. And so, that's thing. Any kind of program definitely needs that component, in my opinion. I also am big on training movements, not exercises, and I like to divide things up into categories that we can plug different exercises in, like a horizontal push or a vertical push, horizontal pull, vertical pull, hip hinge, that type of thing. That way, we're training movements, not necessarily specific exercises, and we'll see how we plug those in the program. I also minimized isolation exercises. I wanted like multiple muscle groups with each exercise because we rarely do strength in isolation, and especially in grappling. You're using your whole body usually. In some, even if your prime mover is somewhere else, we're really using most of your body. And another one, I thought I wanted to build in a system to prevent overtraining. For me, that's really important. Over 50, I can still perform, but man, I need recovery, and it's real easy to send me into an overtrained state. And I think we all, as we get older, I think we see that. So I kind of wanted to, and plus you never know. You could have a bad week, you could have bad sleep, you could have a lot of other variables, and you want to have maybe something built in so you don't overtrain. And so most of the things you're going to see what we're doing in this program is not going to failure. Now, it doesn't mean you never should, and we can talk later about some of the things in the FRS that we did, that there are times where the input you want is to failure.
Yeah, and each athlete's different.
Exactly. And so as a general principle, though, it's different if I'm training you versus I'm putting something out there for the masses.
Right.
Right.
In a baseline, and then once you have the baseline, you may cater it from there.
Correct. Yeah. But when I'm putting out a general program,
right.
Yeah, so we're going to try to build in a system to prevent overtraining, and we'll talk about how we do that here in a second. Also, one of my mentor, Marty Gallagher, used to talk about making a lightweights heavy. And what that means is time under tension. So he likes to take a weight, go as light as you can, but still get the neuromuscular input. And that's why we're getting more time under tension. And there's some value into that. There's nothing wrong with pushing heavy weight. You can get really strong doing it. But as you keep pushing that, chasing that dragon a little bit, it will bite you,
Mm-hmm.
And so you worry about injury, especially if you're fatigued. So part of this eccentric isometric protocol, you can use lighter weights and still get a pretty strong neuromuscular input. We also needed, the last principle is we need to make these things, each exercise, scalable for the person. So, because it's not one size fits all. Someone's not going to be able to jump right into a ring dip, maybe. You're going to have to work your way, and you probably have experience when you first started doing that.
Yeah, when I first started, and then even working with Amy, and having her jump in with me.
Right.
And we were doing last week, we were doing the ring rows, and we didn't have a box, so I just had her plant her feet, knees bent, and she would do the rows, and then after a couple, maybe I'd give her a little bit of assistance from her lower back, from her upper back.
Right.
Just give her a little bit of assistance so she can go through the movement.
And get the reps in.
Yep.
Yeah, so exactly. And that's really important because everyone's starting from a different place. So those are kind of the principles that went into designing this. And tell me about, because you started training, when did you start working with the kettlebells and stuff like that? And
Roughly a year ago.
About a year ago.
Not quite a year.
Yeah. What do you think? What was your experience in doing more of this type of training as opposed to what you've maybe done in the past?
So, like I said, my whole thought on strength training is this year has been really, really informative for me. Mm-hmm. I used to think of strength training as just lifting weights. Mm-hmm. Didn't really understand how to select inputs and how to, cater your training and what you're training for. Mm-hmm. I just considered weightlifting. I didn't realize there was a difference between powerlifting and even bodybuilding. For me, it was just you lift weights, you get stronger. That's what you do. Mm-hmm. Now, throughout the course of the year, I've been expanding upon my knowledge and understanding, okay, this is what our goal is. And through that, I started really slow, starting with you just working the basic lifts that we've been working on, got the rings. And the rings, when I first started doing the pull-ups, I had a hard time doing a pull-up. It was, I could pull up, but I couldn't finish. I didn't have the ability to pull and finish to my chest. It wasn't long before, and one of the things that you had me working on was simply just having my arms straight and just engaging the lats, just pulling down and engaging the lats. After a couple weeks of that, it became super easy. I was flying up there.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also stabilizing yourself, let's say on the start of a ring dip, when you first came up on the rings,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a baby deer, isn't it?
Yeah, you're shaking like crazy.
Yeah.
I would say with the pull-ups in particular, it wasn't that I wasn't strong enough to do a pull-up, but I didn't have the neurological connection to finish. I was all bicep.
Exactly.
I didn't have the lat. I just didn't have that motion. I didn't understand that movement. And so just taking that little coaching point where I was taking my arms from here to here,
Yeah.
and engaging those lats.
Those listening, what Andrew's doing right now is he had his arm up overhead with his elbow straight, and he's just pulling down with his lat. And that's learning how to sequence movement, right? Why would you know how to do that? If we've never trained it before, it's very much like it's a very much technique driven, and you realize how much stronger it is to initiate that pull and then finish off with the bicep.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
starting a lot with the rings, I started with the pull-ups and the ring dips, gained strength really quickly on that. Mm-hmm. And going into kettlebell work with the Turkish get-up, goblet squat, did the sumo deadlift, and in those lifts, I really like those lifts. In taking the time to really understand the lift and breathe properly. That's breathing properly and making sure that you keep that core engaged the whole time through the lift. It becomes a bit of a cardio workout too.
It does.
Show your core a little bit right now, just to let people know what you're working with.
No thanks.
Wow, he's
Sheesh.
That's a compliment.
Sheesh.
you wanted him to take off his jacket. Now you're wanting him to remove
Next thing you know, he's gonna want my pants off.
I admire art. Okay. Sorry. Keep
No,
going.
just a little bit of oil here. Okay.
Hey, how you doing?
Wow. Read your book.
Let me
over
get that
there.
sciatic.
Just read
Oh
your
my
book.
gosh!
I'm gonna get on that sciatic.
Wow, that was a detour. The reason I'm asking you that, is you've made incredible gains. I mean, I've watched them. How do you think those have translated onto the mat?
I feel, people tell me I feel stronger. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I try to bully him as much as I can when I'm like rolling a bill or something.
Yeah.
Try to throw him around a little bit, but no, I feel like more stable, I guess. Mm-hmm. Cardio felt better, which was weird, because you don't necessarily think of lifting as a cardiovascular exercise, although if done properly, like I said, it is. But my cardio felt better. Feel stronger, more stable in positions.
I think the cardio thing is having more of a strength base means you're not getting as much neurological effort into certain positions maybe that you were before, we can't separate strength and cardio. I mean, they work together,
right?
As you know. So it's interesting. A lot of people say that they feel it a little bit, but their partners are like, oh wow, they're feeling a lot more solid. Their passing is a lot more pressure. They are their posture's harder to break, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't say that I've had people tell me that, but I don't necessarily I just feel less tired.
Yeah.
I feel like I could maybe, what was really evident when you used to get you get 2 or 3 hard rounds in a row, and you get to that point where you'd be just beat and exhausted, can't catch your breath.
Yeah.
Your heart rate's through the roof. That happens less now.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I'm rolling with the same amount of, I can still roll the same amount of rounds, and I don't experience that as frequently.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, because there's been times in the past where I would get to a point where, say I'd roll I'd do a roll with Brian and then Muhammad, and do those 2 back to back. And you get done, you feel like you just I gotta get out in the deck. I gotta breathe.
Exactly.
I've had several rounds where I've had intense rounds like that, and I don't feel like I would need. I feel much better, and that could be a combination of. It definitely is a combination of things, because I've also worked on my diet in the same time frame, so I'm sure that has something to do with it.
The guy with the worst diet imaginable is poking holes in your diet here.
No comment.
That's great.
Yeah. He was eating a Reese's at our last podcast, so he still has some. Right?
Another one.
They're the big cups.
Big cups.
Yeah. So, no, that's really good feedback, and I think a lot of people have experienced that as well. And so you mentioned something really interesting before, and you're like, well, I just thought strength training was lifting weights. Well, guess what? We all did, because especially my generation, and I'm not that much older than you, but I grew up with, it's about to make a joke out of that, muscle and fitness, right? And so what we knew about strength training was from Joe Weider and doing bodybuilding exercises, which are great if you want to be a bodybuilder. Mm-hmm. And that's a sport. But it's so funny how a whole culture has associated that with, that's what lifting weights, that's what strength training is. And it's, there's a whole bunch of different people from different aspects of physical culture, the power lifters and all that. You got to know what your goals are and what you're doing, and think about strength training as, building, neuromuscular efficiency and increasing strength in, like you said, an athletic way. And, your traditional bodybuilding workout isn't going to fill that bill typically.
And it's weird, because it's almost embarrassing to say that I thought strength training was simply just lifting weights. When I say that is because over the last year, being exposed to what I've been exposed to, it's like, wow, this is a lot deeper than I ever would have imagined. And it's really cool, because what you start to realize is how scientific it is.
Yeah. And
how you can, no wonder I never got results in the past, because I didn't know what I was doing. Well, I was spinning my wheels. And so now, training for specific purposes, it's amazing how fast the results can come.
It is. And it's, you shouldn't be embarrassed about that, because that's kind of, gosh, I think I've made all the training mistakes in the world, right? Being a coach. And that was a cultural phenomenon. I think, but then when you do, like you said, and you flip that page, you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot of cool stuff here.
It's really cool. It's really cool. It's easy to geek out on it.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's fun.
But I think it's important to note, too, that in the FRS training that we went to, it was Dr. Spina had a comment that he was making, and it kind of sparked something I didn't really think about before. In that he was making a reference to he was in a lecture where he was doing a lecture and he was watching a baseball team out taking batting practice, and which requires a lot of rotational movement and a lot of core strength in a rotational fashion. And they were out doing batting practice, and then he said they came in and they immediately started taking these medicine balls and throwing them sideways against the wall. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I think he said, "What the fuck are you doing?"
That's exactly what he said.
And he's like, they're like, "We're doing functional exercises." He's like, "What were you doing for the past hour and a half?"
I know.
This same exact movement you're doing now.
Right.
Why?
But that's right. The why. It's this weird thing.
But what the clicked for me is, although I didn't think that I knew anything about strength training, which I didn't know, but I was strength training all along, in that jiu-jitsu is strength training.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably one of the more functional forms of strength training that you can do.
I would say.
You're not necessarily going to get bulky doing it, but you get strong.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're all ranges in planes of motion, and you're going to be under resistance.
That's right.
Right. So what I like about the program that you're developing is you're developing with that in mind. We're selecting exercises that will benefit it, understanding that our athletes are still training strength training.
Yes.
And so that's important for people to understand.
It is. And I think, I developed this program we're going to cover here in a second before I did FRS. And the FRS has really opened up a whole bunch. It really got me excited about some other things we're going to do in the future. And I think what you and I are probably going to collaborate on some videos intermittently to like, hey, here's something, very specific to grappling.
Yeah, it is. We're exploring right now, right? We learned something new, and now we're exploring and
just wrapping our heads around it. I got a bunch of all kinds of different equipment and stuff.
I'm just enjoying all the weird looks I get at the gym.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. You're like, what the hell?
I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
So I know muscle is helpful in overall health and well-being. So does this type of strength training that we're talking about impact that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're talking about just muscle mass in general? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's be clear. If that's all you're after, which has some health benefits, you can do pretty much anything you want. You don't have to follow a specific program, even a good bodybuilding type program, if you just want to build some muscle mass for health. As far as that goes, because the biggest killer, I don't know if people realize this, the largest contributor to what we call all-cause mortality, in other words, death from all causes, the biggest correlate is frailty and sarcopenia. Sarcopenia means muscle wasting, basically. And it happens really quickly as we age if we don't do something about it. If we don't, those people that are out there, my age, especially in their 50s and even in their 60s and 70s, thinking they're going to stave that off by doing their running or their cardio.
Yeah.
Not that that's bad.
There's a place for it.
There's a place for it, but it's not going to build muscle mass and try to maintain muscle mass. It's so important. That's a really good question. But there's also a second part to that question. There's just general health metabolically. Having muscle mass is very beneficial. But we also want to develop some functional capacity too, which sometimes those type of workouts may or may not build. I don't know about you, but squatting down to a toilet is pretty important. And losing that ability to do that.
Being able to hover.
Well,
that's key in the real world.
Oh, like out and about? Yeah, hovering above.
You're gonna put them cheeks on.
Yeah, I feel you on that. But
what's wrong with that?
You get AIDS.
Oh my God. Okay.
Or any. You get the Zika virus. I don't know.
I can see a comment stream already. I'm going to be like, no, Bill's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. You're not going to get that.
Hey, I was told in 1979.
Oh, here we go.
Came out that you get it just.
You're talking to a guy right here that when I was a child
had AIDS.
No, I may have sat on a toilet seat that had If you could catch AIDS from a toilet seat, this was one of them. Because this guy right here, I'm just gonna say it.
Say it.
My parents took us to Long Beach when we were kids.
Okay.
I used the public restroom there.
Chris is so disappointed in his network of friends right now.
I know. I mean, I was a kid. I had to go. And now looking back and as an adult, I'm like, why would my parents allow me to do this?
Crickets.
Nothing. Crickets?
That's hilarious. So
Go down there.
To Long Beach?
Yeah.
I'll
Check out their public restrooms.
so for everyone listening, I'll debunk all that here in a little bit off the air.
All right.
You can't get it from sitting on a toilet seat.
This was Bill Walker talking.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I think it's funny. But anyway, back to getting off a toilet seat.
He got us a little squirrely, didn't he?
He did. And you know I'm old and it's hard to get back that train of thought, man. You derailed me again.
We're talking about the muscle thing and then... yeah.
All I was going to say is having a functional ability like that for those activities of daily living, like getting up and off the floor, getting off and on a toilet, is really important. And that's the difference between you being able to maintain independence into old age and having to have some kind of assistance. And that's my whole goal, is to be as functional as I can. And if you don't exercise that, especially, I think 40, it starts really dropping off fast if you're not training.
Uh-oh.
If you're not training, you're fine.
Jeez.
Yeah, you're creeping up on it next year, and I know you're not far behind.
2 months.
I got like 10 years.
I got 2 months.
2 months.
2 months.
All right, that's gonna be a good one.
My goal was to be in the best shape of my life by the time I was 40.
Well,
I gotta get some Bomba.
Round is the shape.
It definitely is.
No, I'm joking. No, you're doing good. So, again, that was a great question, Bill. Aside from your weird tangent, but
In my weird.
no, you're just reacting to Bill.
Right.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, what am I gonna do about that? So, I would say I do hate that idea that, oh, I'm older, so therefore I almost like I don't have a say in my health because I'm older.
Yeah, exactly. Being like, oh well, might as well hang it up. You know, it's just inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, well, wait till you're older. Almost like that's an excuse for why they're out of shape or can't do anything. And not that you don't have challenges when you get older, of course. But, I mean, look at Jack LaLanne.
Yeah.
Come on now. He was old.
He was. That's a great point. And that's my point as well, too. It was one of my biggest pet peeves. I was naive as, I used to hate that. People were like, well, man, when you're my age, I'm like, shut up, But there are some realities, and we'll talk about that in another podcast about recovery and all that. But it doesn't mean there's no excuse. You should be in the gym training.
Well, I mean, and there definitely you have challenges as you get older.
Yeah.
You can, but that just doesn't mean you can't still live a life that's somewhat active.
You absolutely. And people that do very well, successful aging.
Look at the men behind you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm like right in,
yeah,
as Bill pointed out, I'm right in between.
Right there in line, my friend.
In age and wisdom.
Sheesh.
Oh, man.
We get a fourth painting done already? Chris on there?
No, we have one already there, Professor. We haven't put it up yet.
With you?
No.
Okay.
It's going to be a surprise for,
all right.
for you.
Great.
Yes.
Can't wait.
Yeah, that's funny. So, using all those principles and kind of everything, the initial program came up with this, a 12-week program, and they're 3-4 week phases. And so most of these exercises use this eccentric, isometric, explosive type of movement. And what was that the first time you've ever done anything like that, using like the very slow 4-second descent, the 4-second hold, and then the explosion.
Yeah, because anything I had done before, I was just kind of chasing reps. Like, you do 10 reps of this,
Right.
and quality of reps was never a consideration. I mean, just do the reps, right? Like, this is what you do. Like I said, I had a really just a very poor understanding of strength training.
Well, I
time.
think we all do when we start out. You've come you're doing awesome, even teaching those warm-ups and really explaining the principles behind it. And, what I like also, even doing like a push-up using that protocol, you do 5 reps like that, holding that, hollow position and the lowering and the isometrics. It's rough.
Right. And especially if you're putting the isometric tension throughout the body like you're supposed to be.
Right.
It's easy to cheat in order to save or to do more reps, and that's what you got to get that out of your head,
Right.
and really focus on quality.
Yeah, and really think about what am I doing here, and that's that whole time under tension. You don't want to break that.
So don't allow yourself to cheat, because that's the first thing people will try to do. That's the first thing I try to do is cheat so I can get more reps, because that's what we're taught, and that's what's in our head.
That's right.
But why does that help with BJJ so much? Like this 4-second down, 4-second hold. What is it about that kind of protocol that helps with and translates to grappling?
Well, you're asking a pointed question here, because I don't know that it does. But that's my theory. Mm-hmm. And, trying to use watching grappling, especially with a gi, and watching, the postures, and a lot of them you can see, especially of higher level matches, you'll see people like during a guard pass, be kind of stuck in, while you're doing inch by inch, Yeah. You're maintaining a posture and a position and doing very slow, controlled, strength type movement. And then with intermittent explosion. So there hasn't been any randomized controlled trials
right
on this. It's just something that I felt would be beneficial.
Kind of like a baseball example, how it's like they are doing this, they're getting reps in doing this movement, and what needs to be activated with the rotational example. And so we're kind of doing that, as in, like, let's say the push-ups that you're talking about, or the ring push-ups,
or whatever it's going to be, to build
framing.
And that's right, to build up those capacities.
Well, in a situation like
Go ahead.
If I'm playing half guard or knee shield, mm-hmm. and I'm framing against you, mm-hmm. I may need to hold that frame for an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. It's going to have to maintain that. So having that slower descent,
and not even at a exact position necessarily. Like there's tension. Like when we're framing and trying to prevent someone from passing, we're constantly where our arms are at a different position.
It's going to be at different ranges.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a good point. But that's why. I mean, it's just from observation.
So kind of like goblet squat could translate to headquarters position.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Or,
just strength in general, even
standing up in guard, you're just trying to, and you're never going to like Andrew said, jiu-jitsu itself is strength training. We're trying to build some capacities to help that. And what I would like is we've been talking around this protocol for a while now, and I'm going to get down into what it actually is. But my idea would be to get feedback from people and see what they think.
And so Chris hasn't said it, but we have it on our YouTube page.
Yeah, we sure do. And so we've already videoed the first phase. Go ahead.
I was just
please.
I wanted before we move on too far from that, I wanted to just touch on that really fast, and see if I can summarize it.
I like it.
I think that there's 2 different ways of looking at what Bill's talking about. And he was asking, like, how does this directly relate to jiu-jitsu? For example, it may be like you go back to the baseball idea, right? You may take a medicine ball and throw it against the wall and call that a practical exercise because you're working on your rotational power for hitting. Mm-hmm. Versus just a general strength increase, right? Not necessarily specific to one specific movement or motion. And I gave an example with the push-up that you may use that as a frame. But we're not necessarily designed. Was this designed specifically for a specific movement in jiu-jitsu or more just general capacity of strength?
General capacities in a lot of different modes, whether it's a horizontal push or a vertical push, because we're going through different, when we are using the strength, it's different. There are different planes of movement.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not saying, well, this one is for this. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying there's some basic multi-joint movements using certain protocols to build up some physiologic capacity to perhaps enhance what you're doing on the mat in general.
I heard a good quote. I can't remember where I heard it, but it was, I liked it. It was that athletes think in terms of push and pull. Mm-hmm. As opposed to just like, oh, I'm going to go lift biceps today.
That's right.
No, I'm going to go train push and pull. And I'm going to work.
Or your hip hinge or a squat pattern, or right. And the push and pull can be, there's a difference between a horizontal push, like a push-up, a vertical push, like a dip. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a vertical push the other way, overhead, right? So
military press.
Yeah, so I think in those movements, and then you can kind of make up whatever you want. Do you think it's going to be the best way to train that movement, depending on what what you need? Like if you're an offensive line person, mm-hmm. That's going to be a different. It's still a horizontal push. Maybe they need something else that but it's still that movement, and how you integrate that movement and how you load it and everything else depends on the needs of your athlete. This is not easy. Mm-hmm. Trying to make a program like this, because it's not going to cover all our bases, but it will, especially if people haven't strength trained before. It's going to build a lot of different capacities, especially the stabilization. I think.
I guess I was just trying to make it. In my interpretation of the program. Was that it wasn't just designed to say, I really like collar drags, so I'm going to train this motion to make my collar drag the best collar drag in the world.
It was exactly
right.
Yeah, as far as it wasn't near, we don't have the specificity.
If you want to do that, get yourself some bands. And
I was on the other side. I was like, this just seems like it relates so well. So he must have done this push up because we frame all the time. So I'm retarded.
No, it's a good question.
There's going to be crossover.
So, even when we develop when you develop the phase one, we record it, and we've been doing it for a while, right?
Right.
Like so many of these workouts that you chose just seem directly relatable to positions that we're constantly in.
They can be,
yeah.
But what we're training very, very, kind of primal movement.
Yeah.
As far as a push, like Andrew said, a pull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do have, to get you back going, we do have the full phase one on the YouTube page, as well as little tip videos for each workout on there.
Yeah, and you'll see, I'm just going to, definitely go there because, me talking about it is not near as interesting or informative as actually watching it. But we basically divided it up. The first phase is a goblet squat, a ring push-up, a ring row, kettlebell sumo deadlift, and I want to talk about that here in a second, why I chose that one, and then a Turkish get-up. You basically do that as a sequence with no rest in between your exercises, and you do that 2 circuits of that. And each one of them, what's really interesting is, so first of all, let's go back to the why sumo deadlift People that don't know what a sumo deadlift is, your legs are wider, your torso's more upright, you're not kind of bent over. I just felt it was more applicable to grappling because there's more of an upright posture. And honestly, the conventional deadlift is pretty dang hard to teach, depending on your body morphology. And my mentor, Marty Gallagher, said, it takes 10 years to mature a conventional deadlift. And I believe him. I mean, it's a tough technique. Anyway, for each of those exercises, we're doing that eccentric isometric protocol where, like if we're doing a squat, we lower that squat over 4 seconds very slowly. We get to the bottom position and hold there for 4 seconds, and then we explode up. And you watch that explosion movement. It's really important because you want to weight whatever movement we're doing. We want to weight it so we can at least get 3 reps without that explosive movement slowing at all, but not more than 5 reps. So in other words, if you can only do 2 and then your 3rd rep, you're starting to slow that explosive movement to the top, you're overweighted. You have too much weight. If you can do 5 reps without slowing, you're underweighted. So we're in that 3 to 5 rep range with all that time under tension. And you'll have to do some experimenting on what weight to use. And we go through this in our video pretty well.
Yeah, and that's with every workout. It's not just the squat, just so people know. That's every workout. We're doing this 4 second.
That's right.
4 second.
And you'll see, if you guys watch the video, you'll see how it works. So you'll do the goblet squat, 3 to 5 reps with that eccentric isometric protocol. You'll go directly to the ring push-up. Same deal. Ring row, sumo deadlift, and then the Turkish get-up, which I think is just a phenomenal movement, mobility, strength exercise. I think all grapplers should do that. And then you just do that circuit twice. It doesn't sound like a lot on paper. Those of you who've been through it, what's your experience doing it 2 times through? How does that feel?
It's a great workout. If done right, I think that's important. Once again, making sure you have the proper isometric tension throughout the body is so important because it's easy to cheat in certain areas. But like, for example, the goblet squat, that's a killer. I mean, you start to feel it in your biceps, your upper body, your chest, because you're holding that weight out in front and it's wanting to pull you forward. So you're having to stabilize your core. I would say at the bottom of the squat, one of the things I try to focus on is making sure that I don't relax into the bottom of the squat.
That's right.
It's almost like I'm actively pushing off the ground so my hips aren't ever like sitting all the way down and relaxed. I'm keeping that hover.
That's right.
And that isometric tension at the bottom of the squat and then exploding up. So that particular movement, that's a killer. That's a killer.
Yeah. And the other one I think a lot of people have trouble with is maintaining a hollow position during that push-up.
Yes.
Where you're locking your body in a position the entire time and not letting, your midsection get a little floppy.
Yeah, I'd say that the inverted ring row, that's a very, very tough one.
Oh,
that's my hardest.
Yeah,
it's the hardest one for me.
The third phase.
Yeah.
The inverted one. You're talking about just the ring row?
Yeah, the ring row.
Yeah, the ring row.
You're laying down. Yeah.
Yeah, the ring row.
I probably threw the word inverted.
No, you're fine.
I inadvertently threw in the word inverted.
He's got phase 3. There's an inversion kind of pull up thing that we're gonna do. Which is kind of rough, but there's a real reason, and this is really important, why if you slow your explosive, you're done. Because we're trying to prevent overtaxing the neuromuscular system. It's like a built-in feedback mechanism. You may be able to do 4 reps of the goblet squat at a certain weight without slowing, okay, on one day. And let's say the second workout that week, you're on the 3rd rep and you're like, man, I'm not feeling it today. And you slow a rep earlier. Don't worry about it. You're done. We're trying to do the minimal effective dose. When I say not minimal dose, but effective dose, right? Because we don't want to load you up. Let's say you had a bad night of sleep that night. This is built in, so you're not like, oh, I got to do 4 reps because I did 4 reps last time. you got to listen to your nervous system, because you'll make better gains if you stop at that rep than if you just blast through it. And then, oh, by the way, you got hard training the next day, and you're doing a lot of rolls and things like that.
I think that's one of the most important things I learned this year is how to train differently.
Yeah.
Right. So training isn't always the same. It's
Yes.
not always more. It's not like I did, I did this much weight last time, so I got to do at least that much this time. No, that's not necessarily the case. Maybe you dial it back,
Yeah.
I'm just getting over being sick. So I worked out yesterday and I made it light. I went through the motions and I
That's right.
made sure my reps were good and clean.
When you're going to get a lot out of that, because remember the adaptation happens during the recovery session.
Right.
We're just getting inputs for the workout.
Does this kind of follow Pavel's idea of being able to, you're going to train, but you want to be able to train as much as possible also, so you shouldn't feel like you are just completely crushed.
That's correct. I got definitely one of the influences from Pavel on that. Is treating strength as a skill as well too. There's a time and place for it though. There's a time and place for going to failure on something, but you're going to be you're like, I'm doing this for a specific reason and a specific exercise, and I already have my training planned out. Right? I'm not just gonna every time I go into the gym, it's not go time to just dissipate myself where I feel like if I'm not having someone carry me out of the gym, I haven't worked out. Okay.
Yeah. I think I talked about this in the last podcast, but I made that same recommendation to one of our students who was saying they can't train more than twice a week. Well, this person trains 100% when they spar. So, well, you can't train like that more than twice a week. And matter of fact, you probably shouldn't be.
Right.
But that if you train with a different goal in mind, maybe you're looking at it as because right now your training equates to max effort lifts.
That's such a good analogy.
What's the culture?
You need to do some sub-maximal training, and you can get more training days in.
What was that, Bill?
What's the culture that chases soreness? That's like a thing.
Yeah.
I feel like they have to.
Like
the next day, I gotta feel like I'm destroyed or
One
something
more rep.
like that. Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have to do that.
Look, if you have different goals and you're not training great, if you're just doing a strength training program, but this is specifically for people that I'm assuming want to train jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard on your body. It just is. And I love your analogy because it's really important. You don't roll 100% every time.
No.
I mean, there's a time and place to turn it up, but there's some days you're like, yeah, I want to do some light work on some stuff. Maybe I want to do some drilling. I don't know.
I always get quality training in,
Yeah.
but there's definitely different intensity levels,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Don't say it.
Don't say what?
Don't even utter the word in my presence.
What's that? Touch butt?
Basically, touch butt.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying?
You're not the F word?
The F word.
No.
Not in this building, not in this zip code.
I won't disrespect the men on that wall behind Dr. Chris. Or Dr. Chris or Olivia with that word. That phrase.
Thank you. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to have to know.
Yeah.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Tell you later.
Okay. No, but why do we feel like that we got to do that with our workouts? That we got to be, that every,
It's just it's indoctrinated.
I know.
Beat into our minds.
Yeah, it's kind of, it was a little bit of a rhetorical question because I felt the same way. It's like, and a lot of people, they don't feel like they've got their money's worth, or they're not doing training unless they feel that way. And I know Pavel's worked really hard to kind of dispel that. And like, you guys can get really strong and not overtrain. And believe it or not, probably come out better by watching your volume and watching your intensity and cycling that as appropriate.
In like you said, there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
Not every workout can be the same.
That's right.
Or it shouldn't be. It should be varied.
Yeah.
And I probably got sicker than I needed to be because I went through a pretty intense input right before I got sick, and they probably wiped me out.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Shouldn't have rolled with me.
I guess so. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. Jeez. But you're using a good word too as input, because that's all this stuff is. It is an input to the system, and then the system takes that and says, okay, wow, we'll have to adapt to that somehow and get stronger.
That's what I found so fascinating about it.
And that happens during recovery, right? So we're just doing inputs here. We're not, if you just keep inputting and don't allow that time for the body to kind of adapt to it, I mean, you're going to end up, you're not only going to, not make gains, but you're going to go in reverse and get sick and things like that.
It's a signal of input and adaptive response, input, adaptive response,
That's
and
right.
so on.
And then that's the art of it, is figuring out how much of that input when. And we're going to get into that. I think our next podcast, we're actually going to talk about a concept of this, and I'll tease it a little bit. It's called allostatic load. Basically sources of stress from the environment, including exercise, and your body takes it takes it all in together and has to adapt to all of that. So you don't do anything in a vacuum. And so having a training program where you have a little kind of a built-in, a built-in system to prevent it. In other words, your nervous system, if you're not coming up on that explosive movement fast today, well, guess what? You probably should be done with that exercise and then move on, right? And you're still getting the right amount of input for what you need. But now, instead of just pushing through and going to failure, you're listening to your nervous system. I guess it's the point on that.
That's where the whole going through the training every day if you can, but training every day doesn't mean just crushing yourself every day. Sometimes it's just showing up, going through the motions. It's kind of like the Jocko Willink thing, right? Willink kind of thing, right? Maybe you're tired. Well, don't take the day completely off.
Right.
But go through the motion. No weight. Just do it, but don't do it to the intensity that you would normally do it.
We're going to dive deep into that in our next podcast.
Same
but
channel.
no, it's really, really important. It's going to dovetail really nicely into our talk today.
I'd say that what's really interesting about this is I didn't start doing any program really. I did your program, I did this program, but even prior to that, starting that officially, I just started doing pull-ups. And I would do it, I'd teach the kids class, I'd get done, and then I would do 3 sets of 5.
Yep.
I'd go pull-ups, dips. I would take a few minutes off, talk to some people, go back 3. I'd do 5 and 5. I would do that 3 times in between class. That's it.
It's an intimidation move for the kids.
They're gone. It's after their class. But yeah, you got to intimidate them. But just the little, that little bit of work, it created the adaptive response. Like I said before, I wasn't able to I was using all arms. I had to develop that neurological grooving in order to get that full pull up. And then once I had that, I started to develop strength in it pretty quick. Mm-hmm. So you don't necessarily need to think about your workout as going to be this 2 hours I got to go to the gym. No, it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, and a lot of us, that's the biggest problem. They don't have time. They're working full-time jobs. They want to train, they want to get in, I don't know, if in my case, at least 3 days a week at the academy. And you don't want this we can get this workout done in 20 minutes.
Yeah. That's what's great about it.
Yeah. And so we're going to test this out, everyone. And we have it on, like Bill said, we have it on the website with some, and the YouTube channel with some breakdowns of each individual, kind of coaching through each individual movement. And then in 4 weeks, we're going to do phase 2, which is going to change some of the exercises up that are a little more difficult. And we'll find some time, we're going to video that one as well.
Phase 1, I don't know if I remember. it being said, how many days a week is the goal? And maybe you can talk about if there's someone like myself and Andrew, we both will train 6 sessions a week.
As far as your
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And then, so you have people that train like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have people that are 3 times a week. And then you have your 2 to 3 times a week people.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was going to do it, how many times should I make it a goal to? And on the other side, the person that's training jiu-jitsu 2 or 3 times a week, how many times should they shoot for? Or is it even different?
No, it's a great question. So I thought about this like 1 to 3 times a week. If you're only training at the academy twice a week, you could get in 2 or 3 times a week of the extra training.
For sure.
At home. If you're training 6 days a week,
so like, for example,
or 6 sessions.
Yeah. So Monday and Wednesday, I do midday and night class. So there's 2 days a week. There's 4 sessions.
Yeah.
I'll skip no-gi, of course. And then I will do Thursday and Saturday single session. Sometimes I do a Friday, so it can go more than 6. But that's...
So you would really have to watch. I would start off with someone like that, and see how you respond.
Like the no-gi day, which would be a Tuesday in between my 2-a-days.
Yeah, and make sure you are getting the recovery in between. I mean, I certainly wouldn't do it on the same day you're training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to, and that's
Even
where
on a day like a Thursday where I train only at night, don't fit it in the morning. You don't think, like, just do it on a day off?
I mean, there's no rules in that. I mean, if you'd have to kind of listen to your body, see how you respond. Ultimately, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I think maybe somebody like him would be better off with a thigh master. Maybe do a couple reps at home before bed.
Well, let me borrow yours.
You can take it.
Yeah. That thing's probably greased up.
Oh, man. Yeah. I'm not touching any of you guys as thigh masters.
We do have one.
Yes, we do, and we should. Suzanne Summers needs the props.
Yep.
But you're illustrating the point perfectly, because if you're training that training volume, what you're going to be able to do, not what you're going to be able to do, because I'm sure you could do it, but what you're going to be able to successfully adapt to and make actual gains from, yeah, I would minimize your input then and say, let's start with 1 input of this strength training program, see how you feel.
And it probably also just comes down to what my goal is. Is my goal to continue at the rate that I'm getting better at jiu-jitsu, I'm doing more jiu-jitsu sessions?
Yeah.
Or do I want to taper back jiu-jitsu sessions if my body needs it and build strength for the next season?
Man, it's a great question. I mean, we're all doing this this is supposed to enhance your grappling, right? Not in place of. And that's the whole purpose. In other words, if we were doing something in place of it, well, that's not what we're after anyway. We're trying to take whatever schedule you're on, whatever jiu-jitsu journey you're on, like this is where I am at right now. I want to be able to do this as kind of a supplementary type of thing to help. As opposed to this is my primary mode of physical exercise, which would look very different.
It's a supplementation.
It's exactly right. And thinking about that in that manner is really crucial, because people will look at this on paper and like, hey, this is nothing.
Yeah.
It's not nothing. It's a lot harder than it looks, but it's not a lot of volume.
Yeah, and realistically, it should, if you're building your Andrew's workout protocol, it's also going to have my jiu-jitsu sessions in there, and it's going to, everything else that you're doing along with it.
Yeah. That is a really good point, though, and a lot of people may miss that. And this isn't working out in a vacuum. This is working out for someone that has a life and responsibilities, and is also is training the martial art they love. Is however often they're doing it, and and it's there to fit in as you need to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So is this on paper as well? Like, could we put this on? Would maybe do a graphic and put it on the Instagram page? Like, phase 1. This is your protocol. So people have it. They got their goblet squats into their, ring pulls the next.
Yep.
And then into your
ring push up,
then the deadlifts.
Mm-hmm. And Turkish get up.
Yep.
I think what I'll do is I'll right now it's not in the description, the actual workout. I'll put it in the phase 1 description, and then I'll do like an Instagram post that has some graphics to it.
It's also important to note that phase 2 and phase 3 gets more difficult.
Just so you guys know, it's rough.
Are we doing like a thing where we're kicking it off and we're gonna say, hey, are we trying to coordinate people that are listeners that want to run through this program?
You're almost like a plant here.
Okay.
That was my big kind of closing thing here. Exactly. So people that are interested in this, first of all, let's just dive into it and do it. Definitely give feedback, because that's, this is a theory. This is not like Chris's word on strength training for grappling. It's not. This is just something that I think I'm hoping will work well for people, both from a time perspective, not keeping people injury free, and not overtraining, but any feedback so we can make things better is going to be great. So the more people that want to join in on it, we're going to do it for 4 weeks. And ideally what I'd like to see is if people send us questions during the next 4 weeks. And then when we do introduce phase 2, we can answer questions at that time. And we can tell you guys what phase 2 is like. And
or even throughout, like if someone has a question,
totally,
and they're in week 2 of phase 1, then
we can set some time. Yeah.
I do have a question, because I know we have a couple of guys at the gym that also work out. I know some of the guys use like they're doing more like powerlifting workouts as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So there are some exercises in here that have bleed over. Obviously, the kettlebell goblet squat and the sumo deadlift.
Yep.
Somebody like that's doing powerlifting workouts on their own outside of jiu-jitsu, could they, if they wanted to do this, they're already doing their squats and their deadlifts with their powerlifting routine. Maybe they're not doing some of the ring push-ups or the pulls. They're not getting more of the gym. This is going to get into some gymnastics exercises with the rings in phase 2 and 3.
Yep.
Would they be able to do like the Turkish get up?
Yeah.
Would they be able to do this minus the powerlifting workouts that are in here and just work and focus on the gymnastic type exercises in the things that are absent from their traditional workout? Absolutely.
It's a great way to do it. I mean, especially if you love powerlifting, you should do an exercise program is only as good as if you do it. Yeah. And I always encourage people to do what they enjoy. So if they're really digging like a starting strength protocol, a linear progression, where they're doing their squat, their deadlift, and their bench press, great.
I just was thinking of Casey because he's a power lifter, but he's kind of weak on the rings.
Dude, you said that, not me. I don't think he's weak on anything.
The guy can do an iron cross.
He's a monster. Yeah.
No, but we do have a couple guys. Casey, I'm sorry.
No, so it's a good question. What I would suggest though is that some of these things I have them programmed the way they are is because we are doing these full extreme end range of movement. Like if you look at your push up, it's going a lot further down than you would during a barbell bench press.
Well, you get completely different range of motion.
Completely different. And that range of motion is critical, is generating force at that end range, because that's where a lot of injuries happen. So if your body's not used to holding and generating force out of that end range, when it gets to an end range, let's say you're getting arm barred in an Americana or something like that, not that you should try to power out of it, but just at that, even if it's a rapid kind of onset, someone just catches you real quick, if your nervous system is used to being loaded at those end ranges, they're less likely to get injured.
Right, and if you're constantly doing barbells, you're here. I mean, even if you try to force your hands in and come down a little bit, it's not the same as
being able to get that grip. Yeah, exactly. And so your shoulder position's a lot different. So a lot of this is, I will tell you, powerlifting's great, but it's not without, I mean, a lot of people develop injuries as they try to push it because it's very much like, this is it. You know, you have the constraints of that bar.
right.
And I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm just saying over time, you want to vary those angles. And I think this might be something that people can delve into to be able to generate some strength, especially you're also generating your own stability too. And that's why I like the rings and things like that, because you're not laying on a bench pushing. And so you're able to fire all the stabilizer muscles that normally wouldn't be coming into play.
Well, if sorry.
Come on.
All right. Well, it's interesting because you take somebody that maybe hasn't done rings before, but is strong,
Yep.
and you put them on rings and you watch them shake. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's
Your nervous system doesn't know what to do.
yeah.
And
And
then-
otherwise strong people,
I know.
and you put them on rings, and it's like,
Or what's interesting though
Crazy.
is watch how fast. So when I watched you start on them, how fast your nervous system figured it out though.
yeah, it figures it out pretty quick.
And then all of a sudden you were stable.
Yeah.
And then now you could use that motion and create your own stability and generate strength with your own stability. And I think that's more useful to me with injury prevention. I'm putting on my physician hat this time.
Yeah.
Because I mean, injuries in jiu-jitsu happen and they're going to happen. We like to kind of prep our bodies to minimize them as much as we can.
And throughout this, if they do have questions,
Yep.
grapplingwithpodcast@gmail.com, available for all your questions. Inbox
Yes.
open.
And by my bandwidth, I will select the most applicable ones. Don't be upset. I have a certain amount of hours and in the day. But if you have a question, there's probably someone else has the same one.
I'm definitely emailing you guys.
This is great. Just block him, Bill.
Oh, I know his password, and I will make sure that.
But that's the plan would be to get feedback from everyone. Have you guys do it in real time, and tell us your experiences, because there may be something about it that I haven't thought about before. It's kind of like phase 4 trials of a drug.
Is there,
you know what I mean?
right? Is there a certain date that you plan on moving to phase 2?
Yep, 4 weeks from now.
Oh, so we're starting it like
Yep.
right now,
Yep.
Like I'm.
I need to
hopefully
leave here
starting this week.
and go upstairs
Yes,
and get started.
and get those.
You
runs
can
burning.
anytime you want.
Perfect.
And then 4 weeks, we'll be doing the second of these. I'd love to have you back in for that.
Yeah.
It'd be great. So, I mean, it's really nice. You know, I've been training for 7 years now as a brown belt. It's very different than someone that's been a black belt for what? You've been a black belt like 11 or 12 years.
2009.
Yeah. Oh my God. Longer than that.
Yeah, 2009. What is that?
Holy cow.
13 years?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Being a black belt for that long. So,
Old.
well, yeah. Old with the stripes. I like it.
Yeah.
You know, but it's really valuable because I'm sure you've seen all manner of people working out to enhance their strength for, you know, and people doing a bunch of different things. So it's really nice to have your input.
Yeah, and it's great to. I appreciate you and everything that I've learned from you. It's like there's this journey continues, you know, and
Yeah.
it's a different. I geek out on so many things now. As I get older, I kind of get into something and I start to figure out the nuts and the bolts and the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to jiu-jitsu in a lot of ways, you know, like what are you trying to do? There's a way to build that. The inputs really got me. Like that's what sold me on it. Like, oh, that's all we're doing.
It is. And it's such a cool thing that you just think, you know, no matter what you're doing, it's an input to produce some type of desired adaptation.
Well, and I think that was something that in the FRS system that they described in the way they put it, and made it really easy to understand is that they said that the brain's very selfish.
Yep.
With calories.
Yep.
And it's not gonna adapt tissue it's not gonna use.
Or hasn't been used.
Right.
Yeah.
And they use the example, I think, of like astronauts in space. I think they use that. I can't remember if they use that or not. But
That's a general one on load. When you don't have gravity, you
stop producing calcium.
Yeah, you basically will leach out your calcium, get osteoporosis and things like that because your brain, you're not under load.
Right.
Yeah.
So like we can work that the opposite way by saying we want to develop this specific tissue or this strength. So if we give it the proper inputs, the body is going to be forced to have an adaptation.
Well, and I think what's going to be fascinating, what I've really geeked out on with that since we've been to that seminar is finding different things that I think are really applicable and are a lot of bang for the buck using some of their principles. And
you sent me some videos. I actually want to go try some of them.
You want to try some?
I do. Have you guys need to put a little Cribs episode of Dr. Chris's torture chamber upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
MTV Cribs. Here's my back to tank. He's got a back to tank.
Yeah, here's my...
TMI.
No, it's like
TMI, you rude man.
Yeah.
You don't know what a back to tank is?
You don't know what TMI means?
Too much information. You know what a back to tank means? Doesn't know. Do you know?
No.
Star Wars. Come on. That's what they put Luke in.
Oh, okay.
They put Luke in on the.
You know who's just in that? If you're watching the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
he's in it all the time now.
He's always in the back to tank.
Nerd alert.
Oh, I'm missing a back to tank.
That was the joke. Is that's something? If they had one, Chris would have it.
You got that right. I would.
Retarded people, retards.
So MTV Cribs episode featuring Dr. Chris's workout room.
Yeah, it's kind of where I go and trying to figure out some of this stuff and wrap my head around it. But
you sent me those videos and they looked really intriguing.
They're interesting, and I've developed a little more of them, and we're going to be posting a lot of those. I think Andrew and I are going to go, once we figure out some cool stuff with that FRS, wrap my head around a little more, and I think we're going to be introducing a lot of that is going to be a really great addition to the strength training for grappling. Do you have anything else you want to kind of add or kind of discuss?
Not a lot, other than just like once again thanking you for all the investment into our jiu-jitsu community and making us better. I mean, that's been huge. Just my knowledge of what I've gained, and I know everybody else feels the same way. So, thank you for that.
Oh, of course.
It's really been eye-opening and expanded my knowledge, which has been great. And I will say that as you get stronger, that how you feel just on a day-to-day is so valuable. It's so worth it, because beyond just the application to your jiu-jitsu, just walking with better posture, feeling healthier, that strength is so important. It doesn't mean you have to bench press 300 pounds. It just having the good posture and being able to move and function better on a day-to-day basis is an investment everybody should make.
Yeah, absolutely. What do they say? Strong people are harder to kill.
There you go.
So I have one question.
Yeah.
Well, we got a few questions from listeners.
Oh, okay.
We'll do one right now.
Okay.
That'll wrap us up here.
All right.
And I think all of us could answer it from a different perspective, maybe.
This is not necessarily related to strength training.
No. This
Okay.
is,
Cool. I like it.
This just kind of came in, someone listening, and they kind of been wondering this themselves. Just has to do with more so just training in general.
Okay.
And the question is, do we have any thoughts or knowledge on neurodiversity, ADHD, autism, or dyslexia, or some sort of learning disability, and BJJ? Now, I think what they're saying is any tips to, if they have one of those things, and learning and staying on task probably, and going through that jiu-jitsu journey.
Wow, that's such an awesome question. That's almost could be a podcast,
right? Man. And we have three perspectives. So, Chris, I believe you were technically diagnosed with.
No, I guarantee you, I would have been diagnosed with ADD at the time,
depending on when you're going through school.
Yeah,
you have a physician's perspective, and then jiu-jitsu.
I will just tell you, someone, and we got to start. There's those of you that have a diagnosis or think you have that. There's a book by Douglas Brackman, PhD, called Driven. It's really interesting, laying out an evolutionary perspective for these things. And it's a dopamine receptor mutation where people with ADHD, and I'll get to where I think about jiu-jitsu in a second, but people with ADD, ADHD have, in Dr. Brackman's book, he describes mutations in their dopamine receptors such that you don't get as much reward from them. So that's our reward system. And so people with these mutations, he calls it a hunter phenotype, as opposed to, and he says it's prevalent about 10% of the population. Those people go towards, a lot of them go towards high risk activities, rock climbing, things that are high adrenaline because they're trying to hit those dopamine receptors hard. So they can get that reward that everyone else might get from a walk in the garden or something.
Sure.
So they're hitting that harder. They're also frequent task switching. So his argument is that they look like they're not focused, but they're accomplishing a task, and instead of perseverating and, thinking about that, let's move on to the next one. It's a hunter type of what he calls phenotype and physical expression, where you're going from one task right to the next, to the next, to the next, and next, which has some advantages depending on what you're trying to do. Now, if you take someone like that has a hard time getting their dopamine fix because they got to hit it, that receptor isn't working like the other 90% of the people, and you stick them in a classroom, sitting at a desk for 8 hours and less recess available, as it seems from what I've talked to parents now with kids in school. Yeah, the kid's going to be bouncing off the walls. It doesn't mean that that's it just means it's a mismatch between the environment they need to be in. I would say the same thing with any of the autism spectrum disorders. It's a different way the brain is processing information. And instead of looking at those things as a problem, or dyslexia, or any other the so-called learning disabilities, they just may learn differently. It does, and could be better and more adapt. I mean, you just may not be able to learn like, quote unquote, everyone else is learning
in the system that's there currently.
Yeah, and so Dr. Brackman talks about the hunters being put into a system full of farmers,
right? Where
people are just very happy with their rote. Okay, they go to their work, they have this, and this, and someone else is like, another ADHD component is people are entrepreneurs a lot, right? Risk takers and all that, but. The bottom line is they learn differently, and it could be, it could be advantageous for learning jiu-jitsu. But I will tell you this, although, I was one of those kids that did terrible in high school, bored to death, other issues going on too. But after my first time in the military, once I got interested in something, I knocked that out of the park because I was hyper-focused.
That's me. I'm the same way.
A lot of people will talk about that too. They're like, it's not that I can't pay attention. It's just I'm not going to pay attention unless that's important to me.
Right.
Yeah, I had a similar experience in high school where I wasn't really a great student, but as I got older and I was like, people say, oh, you're late, like they call them late bloomers. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I just wasn't interested. Exactly. And as soon as I became interested in something, I became super invested. That was jiu-jitsu right away.
Right.
I committed to driving to Burien from Everett 3 times a week as a 20-year-old, 19-year-old.
And so if you had a problem with focus,
that wasn't it.
That's the thing. And I
didn't have anything that interested me.
and that's where I think this whole ADHD thing, and oh, by the way, I'm just going to put it out there. I understand, teachers are trying to, not all of them, but a lot of them I've seen are trying to tell these parents, oh, your child needs to be put on medication. It's like, no, they need to be in a different damn learning environment. It's what they need. Mm-hmm. And it's a failure of our, and I don't say I have the answers to it, but it's a failure in our educational system in not identifying these people and giving them a different way to learn. I mean, we need that. Anyway,
They took away shop class.
That's what I mean.
That was something I always really liked. Was woodworking and
all that.
It was mechanical. It was, you could understand, like, so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've had the similar experience, so.
Well, and then I was diagnosed as a child. I had a very mild form of dyslexia. Mm-hmm. I say had because I don't even know if I have anymore. It was so mild, but that was something I was diagnosed with. And but as far as,
well, let's talk about that though. Do you learn better from an auditory perspective, from a visual perspective, from a kinesthetic, like doing perspective, or of a reading?
I would say definitely doing.
Yeah.
Like I can learn pretty good by watching too. Mm-hmm. Reading's the hardest for me, but I don't necessarily read things backwards like a traditional dyslexic. You would think, oh, they just read things backwards. I just have I'm slower. I have to slow it down. Reading isn't enjoyable as much for me because I feel like I have to go so slow in order to comprehend.
Interesting. Right.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's a mild form, but as far as like ADHD and learning in these other learning behaviors and jiu-jitsu is concerned, I don't know. Like, I've heard people tell me that, like, oh, my son's has ADHD and I think he needs jiu-jitsu. It's going to be the fix-all. Like, no, what's going to be the fix? I'm not a doctor. I don't know what I'm talking about. Just a layman who thinks like, no, maybe what your kid needs is what inspires him or her.
Exactly.
Like, what do they love? Because that's what's going to grab their attention.
That's right.
And then feed that fire.
Well, and
maybe jiu-jitsu, maybe not.
But this is a great question because it applies outside of jiu-jitsu too. But to the person that asked that question, I think you find how you learn best. And don't worry about what other people are doing. And I think there's all kinds of different learning styles and stuff. But again, I think his point is just do something that inspires you.
Yeah. I think I had a similar kind of experience as you guys, because when I was younger is when, same with Andrew, is when ADHD started coming out. Like, we heard about ADD and a lot of people getting diagnosed, and then ADHD. And then my mom takes me there and they say he's got it all. He's got the whole buffet.
Yeah.
Now, they wanted to put me on, like, I don't even know what, but my mom said no. And my mom thought it was interesting because in school I sucked. I was always getting kicked out of class, and I was the class clown, and I just...
No way.
Bill?
Yeah. What? You were the class clown.
What does that mean?
What is this? I don't even know.
It's very surprising to me.
That was the most shocking revelation thus far.
Sarcasm's very high right now.
Gosh, it's thick. Can barely see him.
No,
so
go ahead.
So
it's thicker than the air at Grappling Industries.
Not that thick. We got a couple different variants out of that place. So
Inslee would have fell over if he walked in there.
Oh my gosh, he would have smelled a swift fart. So they try to get me on stuff. My mom says no. Throughout school, class count, all that kind of stuff. And then baseball, though, I had an interest in baseball, and I could focus on like the kind of mundane drilling. I was able to just do it, and like you're soft tossing to yourself. Like I'd bounce the ball off the ground and wait, and then boom, hit it into the net. I could do that for hours. And then I drop out of high school, of course, but kind of to the entrepreneur thing that you were talking about. I started teaching myself something that I end up enjoying, which is like photography and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I always had an interest in jiu-jitsu, right? But I was always broke and I could never do it, right? Since 2005, roughly 2004 is when I got into jiu-jitsu, but I couldn't afford it because I just I wasn't making good decisions and all that kind of stuff. So, but then when I would study it though, so I would watch a ton of jiu-jitsu because I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where the visual learning, kind of what you're talking about, is I learn best doing, for sure, just like you. But then watching, I can still get a lot out of it. And then so when I show up, it was like there was so much in the bank just from watching that. And then I loved it. And then obviously for the last 4.5 years now, I've been when I came to Cascade, I've been completely obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to learn it because I do enjoy it. But even right now, if I tried learning something I don't enjoy, which is kind of what you're both saying, is I would nothing. I'm not getting anything out of it.
Right.
But I found something I enjoy, and I also break down, because maybe the person's asking if they have this kind of thing, where they can be scatterbrained and stuff like that. I shrink jiu-jitsu down big time, right? To where I will hyper focus on lapel guard or a piece of lapel guard even. And because I like what I'm doing in that moment, I'll do reps. And then when it's sparring, I force myself to just focus on doing that one thing for however long, a week, 3 months. I did lapel guard for like 1.5 years, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that helps. If you have that kind of issue, you find something within the thing that you like. So jiu-jitsu, then you find guard passing or even smaller, right? Knee cuts, knee cut guard passing. Shrink it down to even that, and it'll help you kind of progress and get better as you go.
I think everybody should find whatever they gravitate toward naturally in jiu-jitsu, whatever position or style or technique. Maybe they like lasso guard. They just naturally like that position. Whatever they gravitate toward, pick it, study it, do some self-study, and make that position yours, and then implement it and use it on your training partners. And then that should evolve. Shouldn't be like stagnate. Like, so you do, like you said, you do that for a few months or whatever, get really good at it, maybe a year, who knows. But then like once you feel like you've got it, and then the time you're not getting as much in return for the investment, because there's always peaks, right? So like if you early on, you're going to start to really like, let's say you're naturally like to play spider guard. Oh, that's just kind of a position you gravitate toward. In the beginning, you're going to be able to get a lot of reward for your investment. You're going to start to develop new positions and techniques off it, new sweeps and attacks. Maybe you work it into lasso. But after a while, that time spent, now you're starting to master that position. Move on to something else, you know? But yeah, that'll definitely make your jiu-jitsu better.
And just by drilling into that one position, you're going to find other parts of it that you like. Oh,
right.
I like spider guard, but I didn't even think I would like triangles, but I love triangles, and you get to triangles from spider guard really easily. So it's almost like it's exposing you to other positions that you might really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, circling back, that degree of hyper focus that people with quote unquote ADHD can have.
It's a superpower.
It is.
I used to down talk myself and use it as a joke, and then and it's somewhat recently, in the last few years, I think I started changing my mindset, because I realized that is a legit. It can be a superpower, like teaching myself on YouTube or how much I was able to focus on jiu-jitsu to progress quickly.
Yeah,
like I don't think a normal person, now maybe that's obsessed to some people, but there's something to that. It was obsession with something positive.
Well, exactly. Just I would tell people embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
If that's how you're wired, there's some really good aspects of that. Understand the pitfalls to it too, but embrace there's a lot of positivity and a lot of benefit to having just because your mind doesn't work like everyone else's doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a really, really good question.
And I think it translates even to like someone like Andrew, where he like carpentry as a kid. Like there's something about shop class. There's mechanical. Like I had the same thing with cars, right? Well, now look at Andrew when he builds something now.
Right.
There, when he's doing the renovation or something, there's a meticulous nature to it, a finished product nature to it that you end up having, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one, you enjoy it, so you want it to be quality, right? So you found something that you really enjoy. It has a positive piece to it, and you just built on that. And now, when you build something yourself, it's quality. It's not, shanty.
Exactly.
Too bad. I wish I had a full wood shop.
Oh man,
That'd be
that's
awesome.
awesome.
Jeez, you need the space.
You got me a gift for Christmas, and it just turns out I got you one too, my friend.
Oh yeah.
It's a shop.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh.
You know, it's funny. I was talking to Bill. I said, because speaking of strength training, I was like, I want to get this reverse hyper because Rogue has one that folds up. I'm like, I want to order this reverse hyper, but I don't have any plate weights to go on it. So then I started looking at plate weights, and I was like, okay, if I get plate weights, like they have the bumper plates, like, but then I don't want to. I have to order like at least a 260 pound set. Then I'm not going to get those plate weights and not have a barbell. So I'm probably going to have to get a barbell.
Sacrilege.
And if I get a barbell, I'm going to need a rack for a squat rack. I'm probably going to need a bench. Before long, I'm like, screw it. I'm not buying anything.
That's called GAS. It's called gear acquisition syndrome.
So where do you stop?
You don't. Have you looked upstairs?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You got to.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a real problem. Anyway, that's hilarious. Great question, Bill. Thanks for bringing that out. Do you want to kind of wrap this up and we'll?
Yeah. So as we've already said, I'm going to start the protocol myself right now. And it's comforting to know I can maybe do just, if it's once a week, then it's once a week.
Totally.
Going to go off feel. So if anyone else would like to start now, that would be great. And then if you have any questions, or even if you are going to start it, let us know. I think that'd be cool, just to know if there are a few people. And even if you're not starting right now or even this week and you start in 2 weeks, just do it. Just get on the horse. Even if you're late or whatever. Obviously, this video is going to be up, and this podcast is going to be up for a bit. grapplingwithpodcast@gmail.com for any questions. And then we have our social media, Grappling With Podcast, on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And then you'll get updates. And even on the social media, we'll be posting kind of some different content, not just podcast stuff. So other than that,
excellent.
That's it.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming in, man.
Perfect. Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome.
All right.
See you guys on the flippity flip. And Olivia will be back too.
Yay. Thank goodness
more.
we'll have someone professional back there.
Something.
No kidding. Enjoy your book, sucker.
Nice. Thanks, Andrew.